And welcome you on into another episode of the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. It's Mitch Spinell alongside Mitchell Balla here to give you the latest in the world of athletics. Mitch, it's good to be back here this weekend. Although we have a bit of a short week together, this will be our only episode together for this week before we head into our separate ways for the next few episodes.
That is correct. Our only episode together, and then you will solo host, if not find someone to hop on here and entertain others along with yourself for the next two episodes. I will step aside to undergo some shoulder surgery.
Oh yeah, we'll definitely figure that out, and I wish you all the best in that. And we have a lot to talk about here coming off of the weekend, the wild card weekend, which we'll get to here in the NFL, as well as some other areas of the sporting world. But before we get to that, Mitch, we got to go over, as we do every first episode of every week, the latest that you will be able to find here on broadcasting here on Big Time Sports. Here's what you'll be able to see this coming week. So I will start with the Tuscarawas County slate, the South Side slate for this week, and then Mitch will get over to what's going on in the North. As far as the Big Time Sports Show goes, our weekly talk show in which old Mellow Tones gets to sit down with some of the top athletes in the area, we will be seeing the Claymont Mustangs basketball team join us this week. You can find the television broadcast of that on Wednesday at 7 p.m. and Friday at 10 p.m. Check your local listings on that. As far as game broadcasts go, we will be seeing this coming Tuesday, the New Philadelphia Quakers will take on the Muskies of John Glenn High School. That replay will be found Tuesday at 10:30 and Wednesday at 4 p.m. We will also see some wrestling action this coming week on Wednesday. Claymont will be taking on New Philadelphia. That replay is on Wednesday at 10:30 and Thursday at 4 p.m. We will also be seeing the Claymont Mustangs take on the Indian Valley Braves in basketball on Friday night. We will see the broadcast go on 11 p.m. on replay, and then Saturday at 2 p.m. And then finally on Saturday, we have the Inter Valley Conference cheerleading competition, which you can find on Saturday at 8 p.m. and then the following Sunday at 1 p.m. And of course, you can check your local listings on that, and be sure to check out our schedule on BigTimeSportsOhio.com. You can find our latest schedules, articles, and posts and videos there. Mitch, what's going on this week in Stark County for the Athletics?
Well, we certainly aren't as packed as you guys are down there in Tuscarawas County, but Mitch, we still have our television show and one game of the week. Starting with the television show, you can meet the Glen Oak Golden Eagles boys basketball team. That will be airing Thursday night at 7:30 p.m. and Saturday morning at 8:30 a.m. So if you want to get acquainted to the Glen Oak Golden Eagles, a team that is off to a hot start and still in the thick of things in the Federal League, make sure to check them out along with head coach Rick Hairston. As far as the game of the week, Mitch, it is rivalry week in terms of this matchup. The Jackson Polar Bears travel to Hoover to take on the Hoover Vikings. Replay of that game will be Friday at 11 p.m. and Saturday at 10 a.m. Hoover coming off a giant win, and Jackson coming off their first Federal League loss in quite some time. So that'll be a great one. You throw the records out the window when you face your rival.
Absolutely. And you can find the following listed games on our website. Once again, BigTimeSportsOhio.com/schedule. If you're in the southern part of our area in Tuscarawas County, you can find it on your local cable listings, channel 15. And if you're in the Massillon or Canton area, you can either go to Massillon Cable 128 or Spectrum 989. Once again, that's Massillon Cable 128 and Spectrum 989. So we have those bases completely packed. And we now go into our first topic of the show, which is the news that came out kind of early this Tuesday morning, that the Cleveland Browns have officially found, well, not officially yet. As far as I know, I don't believe the team announced they have a deal, but according to multiple reports, some verifiable sources that we've seen, the Cleveland Browns have found their new defensive coordinator to succeed Joe Woods, and it is one Jim Schwartz, who is one of the most veteran defensive coordinators in the league, who also has head coaching experience. Obviously, Schwartz has been in the league for many years. Mitch, he was actually with the Browns at one point under Bill Belichick's reign during in the mid 90s. He was in personnel from 93 to 95. And then, of course, when the team, went to Baltimore, he went around the league a little bit, found a job in Tennessee for a number of years under Jeff Fisher's Tennessee Titans squad, the defensive coordinator there. Then he got a head coaching job with the Detroit Lions, and up until what we've been able to see from Dan Campbell, I would argue the most successful tenure, one of the most successful tenures as a Lions coach within the last 15 to 20 years. Made a playoff appearance in 2011, even though the record doesn't quite show his success, 29 and 51. A number of those years just completely bottoming out at the beginning. But then he was able to bounce back, find a defensive coordinator job with the Buffalo Bills for one season. He was able to then go to the Philadelphia Eagles and was part of the team that ended up winning Super Bowl 52 against the New England Patriots. And the last two seasons, he's been back in Tennessee working in the administration offices. So, Mitch, this is a very interesting hire because I don't think, as good as Jim Schwartz has been as a coordinator over these last few years, I don't necessarily think he was the top name going into these search proceedings for Brown's fan base and the media. I think a lot of the names thought that Brian Flores might be the front runner to get the job. There was a report from Mary Kay Cabot of Cleveland.com last night, I believe, that said that Sean Desai interviewed on Monday and had such a good interview that they might be even announcing him as the winning candidate as far as today. But it will be Jim Schwartz here. And I think it's good because the Browns don't have to shift much of their defense in order to make this work with a new coordinator.
I like the hire, Mitch. It is the first hire really in the NFL offseason, which is awesome because now it shows the Browns had their pick, right? The Browns interviewed a few different candidates. They wanted to interview another one, obviously, in Gerard Mayo. They were not able to get that done as he stays in New England. But I think Browns fans, and myself included, wanted Brian Flores. But at the same time, you weren't going to wait around when you knew that deep down he wants to be a head coach again. And he probably deserves to be a head coach again after how things ended in Miami. And you know that the Arizona Cardinals are going to interview him. Now, whether they go with him or not, that was a risk you'd have to take as the Browns. But if you waited and he took that job, you were potentially having a pick 'em, and your real top choices could have been gone. So by the Browns doing this, they show that they got who they really wanted. Maybe it was Flores, but like I said, for now it is Jim Schwartz. And I like it because Mitch, he does fit under the umbrella of what they want as far as coaches, right? As far as the education background, when you talk about using analytics in a certain degree, he has shown that throughout all his days as a coach, but he's also a tough nosed defensive coordinator that will get in your face. And I feel like that's something that the Browns have not had at all on the coaching staff, not just the defensive side of the ball, but the coaching staff, somebody that's going to hold you accountable verbally and make sure to check you at the door. Somebody that I think needed to be in this locker room this past year, which Davion Clowney and Myles Garrett and all the issues that were, as it seems, going on in there at the time. I also think that, and I won't steal your thunder here, I want to make sure you get to read his defensive coordinator, head coach tenures that resulted in certain things under player. Today, I don't want to steal your thunder. He does bring with him a credible track record as far as defensive coordinator. And that's what we want. Okay. I mean, yeah, sure. Maybe you can give them 6 weeks now and we start this season like we've somehow seen every single time the past 3 years with Joe Woods. But I'm excited to see what a guy of this caliber what he can do with this team. And then also, what will the Browns do in free agency in the draft now? Because Mitch, for a guy who likes to stop the run first, you'd have to think they will be going after some defensive tackles now, because what the Browns have on the roster currently is simply not good enough.
I was looking at them this morning, and we'll get to them in a little bit. But I was just going to say you were right. A lot of Schwartz's past systems have been very focused on having a top defensive tackle guy, and in each of his stops, whether it be as a defensive coordinator or a head coach, he's done very well with singular names and in getting them either to the Pro Bowl or onto the All-Pro team. In Tennessee, he had Albert Hainsworth pre-Washington contract. In Detroit, he had Ndamukong Suh. In Buffalo, he had Marcel Darius. In Philadelphia, he had Fletcher Cox. There's some potential here for a guy to really break out in this Browns system, although we mentioned as far as the defensive tackles go for the Browns, it wasn't one of their strongest departments this year. You had to work with Taven Bryan, Jordan Elliott, Roderick Perry, Ben Still, Tommy Togiai, and Perrion Winfrey. And it's not the greatest thing when I think maybe Jordan Elliott was the top player among them, or at least the one that you saw play the most often. But one of those guys can maybe have a breakout. I'd like to see a guy like Perion Winfrey get some sense into his head for once, and maybe he could have a really, really cool sort of rebound into this top player. Or if the Browns pursue some other names here, I know there's been some potential names bounced around that people have been talking about in the Cleveland area. Who's somebody that you think, if the Browns had to go outside to find, that they should add to their defensive tackle room?
It's not even a question. It's Adrian Payne of the Washington Commanders. That's a guy that literally fits exactly what the Browns are missing. He is a player that is very talented, Mitch, and he is a player that would fit the scheme of what Jim Schwartz is going to run, unless he completely just changes what he wants to do, which I don't think that's going to happen. So I am all on board for Adrian Payne. I know there's a lot of other Browns fans out there that have said that's who they would want. And as far as from what I've seen him play in Washington, Mitch, he would be the perfect fit. And I feel like a compliment alongside in terms of right next to Myles Garrett, not on the opposite side of the line, but we'll have to wait and see. Because at the same time, I could see the Browns using a draft pick, if not multiple, on defensive tackles, if not trading up to get a top defensive tackle, maybe early in the second round. Or maybe the Browns go out and they sign a couple, maybe just not of the magnitude of Payne. But I'm all that would be my number one target right now for the Browns is Payne.
Looking at some of the numbers for Daron Payne this past season for Washington, it is Daron Payne. I just want to make sure. Yeah, Daron Payne.
Sorry,
Who's
that's
okay. Player. That's okay. That was about Michigan State player. Yeah. 2022 was his last year under contract. He is a free agent going into this off season. And looking at some of the things we have here, it's very interesting to see what he might be able to bring to this Browns system and what Schwartz is going to bring to this system overall. And I saw this thing throughout the past week that there was a little bit of pushback when it came to a few candidates regarding a certain aspect about them, particularly on Monday when the Sean Desai thing happened. I saw a number of Cleveland people kind of turn their noses at it because Desai seemingly fits into this whole analytics driven system that the Browns have been really trying to make sure it worked under the Paul DePodesta, Andrew Berry, and Kevin Stefanski. And I think because we're not winning anymore, the Browns fans are kind of sick of the eggheads really trying to like outsmart themselves and do too much. And when they saw a guy like Jim Schwartz, like, oh, this is a guy who comes from a traditional football background, a guy who's able to, instill some hardassery into this locker room. But Jim Schwartz, along with a number of these coaches, have gotten into the analytics game over these last few years. And it's not really necessarily because it's this grand sweeping thing that changes the entire sport forever and it's the right thing to do. It's just because it's something that could possibly bring an advantage if applied correctly.
You're absolutely right. And I think that's the big thing, right? That's what I mentioned right when you asked me, is he fits the umbrella of what the Browns want as a staff, but at the same time, he also fits something that I thought was missing. The other thing, Mitch, that people aren't really talking about, but it was a conversation when we talked about Brian Flores is, well, hey, if Kevin Stefanski doesn't do well, maybe we fire Flores and he's the interim head coach.
That was my biggest fear. Yep.
Jim Schwartz, though, at the same time, Mitch, does have head coaching experience. So now maybe it's not as hot of a seat for Stefanski in terms of someone breathing down his neck. But now if the Browns do get off to a rough start next year, because I think we're all in agreement here that Kevin Stefanski will open the season on the hot seat, if not the hottest seat in the NFL. Now you do have somebody to take over the reins that knows what they're doing instead of thrusting somebody into action that has never been in that position before. I'm not saying I'm hoping that is the case, where maybe I was kind of hoping that was the case with Brian Flores, but at least now when you do it, you have somebody that's been able to coach football as a head coach and has been there and done that before. So I wouldn't be too nervous if we moved on from Stefanski 6, 7, 8 games into the season.
On that, I'm what I was kind of getting at with Brian Flores is I do think that if Stefanski had started to get off to a slow start in 2023, there would have been like that dog in Brian Flores's eyes to give me this job, especially if the Browns fans really started clamoring for it. Because Brian Flores, I think, is going to be a head coach in the NFL again someday, whether it be with the Browns, or not with the Browns now, whether it would have been in this situation with the Browns, it's probably going to be with another team at this point. Jim Schwartz is a guy that I think is capable of becoming a head coach again. And if the Browns were to go that direction during this season or into next season, they could be like, he could be like, all right, let's, I can do this again. I've done it before. But I don't think
Mhm.
it's necessarily a case of him trying to work his way back up. And he could easily do that with another team, a couple of seasons from now. But I think this is more so a case of, okay, we know he can do this job. He's not going
Mhm.
to demand a whole bunch of change. He can work within a system that we like to do, even though I think he can instill some more physical and hopefully mental toughness into some of these players to the point where you can get this talent that we've been kind of claiming for the last couple of seasons. I feel like there is talent on paper here. As much as people like to say, oh, really? You thought the Browns? Yes, I do. This is a team that we have seen flashes, a number of flashes of throughout the last 2 or 3 seasons, especially during that postseason run, where especially in that wild card game, you made Pittsburgh look like chumps in the first half, and then you go to Kansas City and you nearly took down who's supposed to be the team of the decade. So I think this is a system that can work. Will it work? It's only if this team can make it apply well, and if they can win enough games to in the system that this defense can help the team win instead of taking wins away from the team.
I completely agree. And I think when you look at the biggest issue for the Browns this past season, it was stopping the run. I mean, my goodness, the Atlanta Falcons in week 4, Mitch ran it, what, 11, 12, 13 straight times against us. We still couldn't stop it. So you take a man that can come in and fix that need, or at least put you in the position to fix that need almost immediately. You have to think it's going to work. Now, if it doesn't, maybe to a certain degree, it's not the coach. I do not think Joe Woods was ever the right candidate to be in the position he was in with the Browns. But maybe if the Browns do everything Schwartz wants and the defense still isn't good, we can't have this conversation that they're talented on paper. Maybe they're just not good enough. And that's where we're ultimately going to find ourselves here sooner or later, is because for the past 3 seasons, we kept talking about the Browns on paper, the roster on paper, the talent on paper, and they just keep losing. And so eventually, if they don't turn it around, because it's ultimately up to the players, we just don't have a good team. And that sucks to say, but that is where we're going to find ourselves here eventually, because you can only go through so many coaches with so much talent. But I really do believe the Browns got it right, Mitch. I do believe Jim Schwartz is the right guy. I believe that this is the type of hire we had to have. And I'm all for it. There's nothing I can say negative against it, because I truthfully do not think we were going to get Brian Flores, because I do think he will be the next head coach of the Arizona Cardinals.
That is a bold statement. I mean, the Arizona Cardinals did hire a new general manager in Monty Austinford, who, by the way, I don't know if you saw it. He said that something along the lines of ego will not be tolerated with this team. And I'm already thinking to myself, like, you have a quarterback who cried about a stipulation in his contract that he read the playbook a little more.
Yeah.
What are we doing here?
Well, Mitch, without getting too far off topic, I do think that there is something to the truth of a new general manager comes in and does not care about who's on the roster because they didn't draft them, whether you want to believe it or not.
Fair.
I also have a hard time believing that Brian Flores and Kyler Murray could coexist in Arizona. I
Whoa,
also do
whoa,
not see,
boy.
I don't think those personalities could. So now you're talking about potentially a GM coming in that knows who he wants as head coach. Maybe he's going to trade Kyler Murray. Who knows? He's hurt. He's coming off of an ACL, but just something to ponder, because every time a general manager takes over, there is no reason for him to keep some of the guys on that team. Obviously, I feel like a few players are the exception, but who knows what's going to happen. And if you want your head coach that is proven he will do whatever it takes to win at all costs, including telling the owner, I'm not going to lose on purpose, even if you pay me extra.
Allegedly.
Allegedly, maybe you do whatever you can to get him here and trust that he'll be able to turn around in a few years.
You had me there for a second, because I was like, wait, you just said that Brian Flores would be the next Cardinals head coach, and then you're saying he and Kyler Murray couldn't coexist. The trade thing is interesting because you're already apparently going to have to trade DeAndre Hopkins at some point this offseason. But I don't know. I don't I have to work out a trade in my head right now with the teams that are dealing with moving quarterbacks this offseason, or trying to gain quarterbacks this offseason, to really put this one together, because I don't know how you could just give them away and then try to play for the 2024 draft, because that's such a high risk, potentially low reward situation. So when we come back, we'll go more into what happened this weekend in the NFL, comebacks and upsets, and just statement victories, especially last night. We'll get back right after this. Hey there, folks. This is Mitch Spinell, and I want to give you guys a quick message regarding 988. If you don't know what 988 is, it was created to make it easier to remember how to get help in the event of a mental health or addiction crisis. This is different than a medical, fire, or police emergency where 911 should still be called immediately. 988 connects you with Stark County's Crisis Center, which is equipped to help people in emotional distress or experiencing a mental health or addiction crisis. So remember, 911 for medical, fire, and police emergency help, and 988 for support in overcoming a mental health crisis in Stark County.
Buying a home has never been so affordable with record low interest rates. Hartzler's Quality Housing is ready to put over 40 years of experience to work for you. Family owned and operated since 1978, Hartzler's has a wide selection of model homes on site with a knowledgeable team to help make your new home a reality. Open 6 days a week. Visit them off I-77 in Dover or online at hartzlers.com. Hartzler's Quality Housing. Quality from start to finish.
You deserve the best. And at Ferris Chevrolet, Buick, Cadillac, Toyota, that's what you get. We consider you, the customer, to be part of our family. Anybody can make promises, but when you visit Ferris, you get the Ferris deal from a Ferris wheel. So if you're looking for a car, truck, or van, think Ferris. Think Ferris!
You invest a lot in your home and vehicle purchases. Van Nostrand Young and Associates want you to feel secure should anything happen to those investments. We partnered with providers like Grange Insurance and other industry leaders to be sure you're presented with the most complete coverage to fit your needs. Because we're not only here to protect the items you invest in, we're here to protect your future as well.
Call Van Nostrand Young Insurance in North Canton at 330-497-1867.
We all have 206 things in common. Our bones keep us up and moving. And we at Cleveland Clinic Union Hospital care about every single one of them. From the tip of your finger to a brand new hip, our orthopedic experts will keep you going while keeping you safe. For every break and breakthrough, for every bone and joint, for every care in the world. Get the care you need when and where you need it. Visit unionhospital.org.
When others treat your fries as an afterthought, all you're left with are cold, soggy fries. That's why Wendy's new fries are ones you won't forget, guaranteed to be hot and crispy, or we'll replace them. We're talking natural cut, skin-on fries, perfectly seasoned with a hint of sea salt. In fact, they're even preferred almost 2-to-1 over McDonald's. These are fries so hot and crispy, they beg a new question.
What would you like with your fries?
Try them today, only at Wendy's.
At participating U.S. Wendy's, taste preference based on a national taste test by an independent research company.
And we're back here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Mitch Spinell alongside Mitchell Balla. Mitch, let's talk about this past Super Wild Card weekend because there's a lot of games to talk about. I want to start with the most recent one because it's the most fresh in my mind. I had a friend last night, Mitch. I don't know. You don't know about this because you weren't there. Well, this is kind of relevant to you because of all the money exchanging, I should say, you've been getting into these last few weeks. I had a friend who had a parlay this week on Wild Card weekend to where if the Buccaneers had won last night, he would have cashed out at $1,300. Well, today he is not $1,300 richer because the Dallas Cowboys basically just slapped the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the face last night in what was a very, I would say, impressive statement victory to where Dak Prescott looked like a man on a mission. He did not want to go to 4 out of 5 playoff losses for his career at this point. And it was such a weird game because you had this great Dallas offense, this great Dallas defense, and then you have a kicker who can't hit from 15 yards if his life depended on it up until the end. But that was such a weird phenomenon that was going on through that game to the point where I was like, get it together, buddy. Let's go. Come on. And then you start feeling more bad for him to where when he makes it, you're finally like, yes. But thankfully, he'll have a few more days to figure that whole situation out.
Yeah, I eventually did end up feeling bad for Brett Maher, somebody who missed 3 extra points all season, and he misses his first 4, and you saw the frustration of the sideline. Then you also in the back of your mind thought, He's missing these, and of course, Tom Brady's going to probably lead
Yeah,
some
that's what I
stupid
thought.
comeback, do the vintage stupid thing that we always see him do with a bunch of lucky breaks. And sure enough, that wasn't the case because Tom Brady should have just stayed retired. I actually went to bed after he threw the interception in the end zone after the Cowboys took a lead, because that was not a Tom Brady I'd ever seen before, and I knew it was over. I actually then woke up in the middle of the night, checked the score, was upset because I lost some bets, Mitch, but at the same time, was not surprised at all. Credit to the Cowboys. They came out and played like a team that they should have been. I mean, obviously, this is a very good team in the NFC that just so happened to be in the same division as the number one team in the NFC this season. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are dead. They're gone. Tom Brady's gone. I don't know if he's retiring. I don't know if he's going somewhere else. He looked terrible last night.
Did.
He looked like the guy that I watched 15 of the 17 weeks this season. But I didn't bet against him because I figured it was just all this, Tom Brady's sleepwalking. He doesn't care. He knows they're in the worst division of football. They're going to make it, blah, blah, blah. We were wrong. He was as bad as he looked all year. And Mitch, he's at the age now where it doesn't seem like he's going to get back the plane he had just last year where he led the league in passing. And the Cowboys, I don't know, Mitch. Do they have a shot to beat San Francisco next week?
It's going to be very difficult. And before we get into that, on paper, the stats for Brady didn't look bad. 351 yards, 2 touchdowns, and then the interception where that was just a panic throw. He was about to get sacked and try to throw it out of the end zone. Didn't. But he went 30. I didn't realize this many passes, 35 of 66. I mean, that's because you had no running game last night. Leonard Fournette had 5 carries, 11 yards. Rashad White, 41 yards, 7. You had nothing. But it was such a fascinating dynamic to where early on Dallas gets that lead, and then you think maybe Tampa can make it when they get that first touchdown. And then once they went for 2, I was like, all right, this is over. Especially when, if anything, Mars struggles from the field from kicking PATs may have led to them taking some of these risks that ended up paying off. I believe that last touchdown to CD Lamb was on 4th and 4. And instead of, trudging Mar out when he looked like completely lost, they just decided to go for it. And there were a couple of times last night where Dallas decided to get risky with it, but then they had that touchdown basically to seal it. You had the one to Gallup, who I don't know how. At first I thought, how did he stay in bounds? And then apparently the rule was he went out of bounds, but then he reestablished himself because he made contact with the defender, which that ball should have been intercepted. I don't know what happened there as well. But kudos to the Cowboys. And it's very fascinating to see this coming weekend. 3 NFC East teams are still in the mix now, because obviously the Eagles will play this coming week. They were the number 1 seed. But the New York Giants, Mitch, look. We'll get to him in a second. We will address the 9-figure elephant in the room. Daniel Jones played like another man, like Dak Prescott, another man on a mission this weekend to prove to the people, like, I am the Giants quarterback going forward, and you will acknowledge me as such, because I was shocked how well he was playing in a road playoff game where, even with the Giants and how well they played this year, could have easily been destroyed. I mean, they've already gotten beat by the Vikings already this season, but the man is the most sneakily fast quarterback in the league. It doesn't process in my mind. He looks like Tom Brady on his pro day, and he has these long strides, and he can just get out there in a couple of seconds past defenders. It's unbelievable. And on top of that, Saquon Barkley, who in his first playoff game looks like a top 5 running back in the league.
Talk about bad bets, Mitch. Took him over 59.5 yards. He had 48 at halftime, got 5 rushing yards in the second half. Not happy with Saquon Barkley. But Daniel Jones. Mitch, this just goes to show you that coaching is everything. Coaching is everything. The New York Giants were ready to throw this man to the side after this season. They didn't give him his 5th-year extension because he looked so bad in the previous, 3 seasons. Yeah. Ryan Dable comes in and put together an offensive scheme along with his offensive coordinator, who let me make sure I say, the offensive coordinator calls the plays. Something to fit around Daniel Jones. And Mitch, he's played great all season long. I say great in terms of what he had played like the past 3 seasons. 305 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, and the dude ran for 78 yards. He was just making things happen. And this is just a completely, which is crazy because we're in the playoffs. So we should have seen this for 17 games, but the Giants are just playing a style of football that personnel they have these top tier wide, yet they're still doing Hodgins and Darius Slay 38 yards and Saquon out of the backfield 556. Daniel Jones is, I want to give him his respect, but he is playing to the system that's been put around him. Right. I don't want to say he's a system quarterback, but they have put him in a spot to where if he doesn't turn the ball over, they're going to be a tough team to beat. And guess what?
Right.
He didn't turn the ball over.
Yes.
And there's a reason the Giants had the lead for as long as they did in that game, and the Vikings were trailing the entire time.
Well, you look at some of his numbers here. I mean, he had 24 touchdowns his first season. This is an interesting contrast. 24 touchdowns his first season, 3,000 passing yards over 13 games, but he had 12 interceptions. And then the next 2 years, the touchdowns are cut in half. The interceptions are still at the rate they're going. So you're thinking, is this really the guy that you're going to rely on for the next few years? And he wasn't winning, and the team wasn't winning games.
Yep.
This year was kind of like an Alex Smith type of year. And I'm talking about Alex Smith from like 2013 to 2017, like the Chiefs era, early on Washington era, where he was never going to blow you away with his arm or with his pinpoint accuracy, but the man could work around these defenses from time to time. This year was 15 touchdowns, just 5 interceptions in 16 games played. You had 3,200 yards, 100 passing yards, a career high. His completion percentage went up 6 points from 61 to 67, and his running attack was unbelievable. It's by far the most rushing yards he's had in a season at over 700 and 7 touchdowns. So he was able to boost those numbers up as well, which, you know, the system under Dable now may allow for him to do more of that, because we saw those flashes early on in his career. I believe it was on Monday Night Football where he nearly went for that long touchdown run before stumbling around the 10-yard line. But somebody saw that and thought, what if we could do that? He could do that more often. And now he's essentially the thing on Twitter the other night was Vanilla Vic. I feel like we got to get a better name for him, not to disparage what Michael Vick could do, because Michael Vick was 95 speed on Madden 04 for a reason. But I don't know. I thought my nickname I tweeted out last night, Daniel Speed Jones, was not creative, but it could apply better, I thought. But if we come up with a more creative one, we'll put on this podcast.
I can't think of one right now, but I'm going to think of one, or try to think of one now, because he does need a nickname. But Mitch, what Dable's doing with Jones is similar to what he did with Josh Allen in Buffalo. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that Daniel Jones is Josh Allen, but we saw Josh Allen run a lot, and now Daniel Jones is running a lot. And to your point, Dable probably saw some glimpses of what Jones could do with his legs and said, why has nobody else tried that? Why didn't Joe Judge try that with his staff? Let's try it. I mean, it's literally, there's no risk in it, right? You took over a team that was not good at all. You took over a team that was expecting to move off Daniel Jones after the season. So if he flamed out and it wasn't the right fit, you were going to be okay, because you were probably going to be able to go get somebody you wanted. But now the Giants are in a spot where they're going to be able to potentially sign him. And Mitch, there's been theories out there now of, what spot would you rather be in? Would you rather be the Giants, who might have to sign him for $35 million, or the Ravens, who it looks like Lamar could demand up to $50 million? And I mean, it's crazy. And that's going to be a whole other story we talk about here shortly. But it also leads me now to think that the New York Giants have a very, 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 very good shot at beating the Eagles this weekend, because they just lost 22-16 the last game of the season to the Eagles, in which the Giants rested all their starters, including their backup Tyrod Taylor, and the Eagles played their starters to clinch the number 1 seed. Third time in a division, or third time against the same team. You saw what a couple other divisional opponents did against teams in the playoffs this weekend, the third time. This is going to be very interesting this upcoming Saturday when they travel to Philly, or Sunday, excuse me. No, Saturday.
Yeah.
It is Saturday.
Yeah, it's Saturday.
It's going to be interesting.
Yeah. And as for the other team, I mean, that was just a slow start that you got off to. And it's really tough to come back from things like these. But as we saw this weekend, it's possible. And Kirk Cousins didn't play bad. 31 of 39, 273, had a couple of late touchdowns. He and TJ Hawkinson were just like a battery system, like just passing and catching up until the last play where it's 4th and 8 and you throw a 3-yard check down. And I'm looking at it, and I ended up watching Kurt Warner's breakdown of that final play on Twitter. It's like a 6-minute video where he can kind of pinpoint certain things, and I was just getting kind of frustrated because it's like that's the play that you end your season on. You're just not even you're already risking a lot by throwing it short, and then even though it's your top receiver, and then you just can't get anywhere close to that line. Just a disappointing way for a 13-4 team season to end.
It wasn't an interception. I really thought it was going to be an interception that doomed the Vikings, but yet it was Kirk Cousins either not knowing what down it was or just not really thinking when he let go of the ball. My biggest issue, Mitch, is how do you not throw the ball to your best wide receiver in your season on the line? The best wide receiver in all of football this season, in Justin Jefferson, and you don't throw it to him.
No,
and then you also throw
it
4 or 5 yards behind the line to gain.
You
Pretty fitting for how I feel about Kirk Cousins and where I think he stands as a quarterback. I know I, contacted you right away after the throw, but I'm not surprised. This is a team statistically that, whether you love or hate the statistic, was the worst 13-4 team in NFL history based off of, points scored versus points against. They were 11-0 in 1 possession games. So it was a weird team. It was a really, really weird team this season, because there were times, Mitch, where it's like, all right, they're frauds. And then there was other times like, oh, you know what? No, they're not frauds. Maybe we should give them the respect. And here they fall at home.
Yeah. Yeah. And just Jefferson had 7 catches on the game. But it was only for 47 yards. So it was kind of a game where he wasn't breaking out and making a ton of big catches, but longest catch was, I think, 10 yards on that game. So that's a disappointing way for Minnesota's season to end. So we have the NFC teams. Well, of course, also San Francisco beating Seattle, which I'll give Seattle credit. That first half, I thought they had them. I thought they were going to, maybe make a big difference there. And then San Francisco finally woke up and were like, all right, we're the best team in the NFC. Let's go. That team is going to the unless Philadelphia can really just stick it to this weekend. I have very few reservations in my mind that San Francisco is the best team in the NFC, even with a 7th round pick at quarterback, who, by the way, is looking like he could actually be the guy, even with all the stuff that's been going on with other quarterbacks.
I hear you. I think the Niners are definitely up there. Maybe they're the co-favorite to win the NFC. But Mitch, if you look at how Brock Purdy played in the first half, and why Seattle was in that game so late until the strip sack, if Brock Purdy plays like that against even Dallas this week,
I agree.
The Niners won't win.
I agree.
And if he plays like that on the road in Philly, the Niners won't win. Now, if he plays like he did in the second half, nobody's beating the Niners.
No.
I don't see a team that can beat the Niners. But that first half, you wonder, was it nerves? Was it jitters? Was it the fact that the Seahawks had just played him, 4 weeks earlier and had a game plan against him? And then really, Mitch, it all changed, though, when the strip sack happened of Geno Smith, the fumble, the Niners get it. Obviously, we know what happened from there. But the Seahawks and Niners were there neck and neck the entire game. And ultimately, the turnover turns out to be the difference. Niners go on and score. They're up 2 possessions, and that's where we get to 41-23. But as good as the Niners defense is, as good as the weapons they have are in Debo and Kittle and CMC and Brandon Ayuk, it's going to come down to Mr. Irrelevant, who is currently Mr. Relevant. But what Brock Purdy are you getting is going to be the question on how far the Niners can go.
Not only that, but you'll have to see how Dallas's defense responds to a better running back than they had this previous week. If Christian McCaffrey anchors that 49er offense well, then Dak's probably going to have to throw about 50, 60 passes just to keep him in the game, because Tony Pollard can do good things. Zeke Elliott can do some good things, even though this might be his last year in Dallas. But I don't know. I'm curious as to what that matchup will be. It's a classic NFL postseason rivalry, especially in the 80s and 90s. We'll get another version of that. We'll also have NFC East versus NFC East, which is good. And then in the AFC, we had one big name go down. We had nearly the other one go down. This one, I was just stunned by. Buffalo nearly losing to a 3rd stringer with the Dolphins. Give the Dolphins a lot of credit for that game. They're able to do that one. And then obviously the big discussion point is how they just wasted all that time near the end. Which that's tricky. And they had some problems like that throughout the season, but that is an unfortunately poorly timed mistake that ends up costing you on the final drive.
Yeah. I mean, they had the opportunity right then and there, but whether you want to point to that as coaching mistakes or the fact that it was a third string quarterback, you can pretty much pick and choose where you want to go with that. But this game turned out to be from a blowout, Mitch, to the Buffalo Bills having a legitimate shot to be eliminated at home.
Yeah.
And this is why I foreshadowed, talking about the Giants and Eagles. This is the third time they played the Dolphins this year. They lost in Miami, then they won in Buffalo in that snowstorm, I believe, right around Christmas. The Dolphins went in and made halftime adjustments, and the Bills' offense didn't look good, which is crazy because Josh Allen still had 352 yards passing and 3 touchdowns, but he threw 2 interceptions. And that's going to be the key. If he throws interceptions, Mitch, this Bills team is not going to be the juggernaut we think they can be.
No.
But if he doesn't turn the ball over, what really happens in this game? At the same time, I mean, this is a hobbled Miami Dolphins team. Tyreek Hill had 7 catches for 69 yards. We know towards the end of the season he was battling a couple injuries. Jalen Waddle, Mitch, how many drops did he have along with balls that he had that were batted away then? I mean, Jalen Waddle could have single-handedly potentially changed the whole outcome of this game if he hung on to a couple throws. Skylar Thompson did well. 18 to 45 does not sound well. 2 interceptions to 1 touchdown doesn't sound well, but Mitch, they were right in this game. The game was theirs for the time being. And if Miami, yes, the loss hurts, but at the same time, you were never supposed to be in this game. This is a spread that was 14.5 before kickoff. Nobody expected you to be there with your third string quarterback. I don't think there needs to be a lot of changes for Miami. The only question is, do you have to get a new quarterback because of Tua, which is something we'll probably have to keep an eye on throughout the offseason.
Well, they did. Well, it was reported that he is likely to come back next season, and I don't think he's going to retire before getting that contract extension that many of these guys get, unless the concussions are like so bad to the point where you're really struggling to think now. He'll wait it out, and if he wants to keep playing, he'll keep playing. And as far as the Bills go, even the other team right now kind of had a slip up nearly, because the Ravens nearly beat the Bengals on their turf, kept it close, and we're up at halftime 10-9. And then obviously the big turnaround happened when Sam Hubbard, hometown guy, goes back 98 yards. Tyler Huntley thought he got the ball over the line. He didn't. That ended up being the deciding play because nobody scored after that, which is fascinating. And then you nearly saw at the end, Baltimore could have had it. It kind of reminded me of Super Bowl. What was it? The second Giants Super Bowl win over the Patriots. There was a Hail Mary play on the final throw from Brady, and I think it might have been Aaron Hernandez or maybe it was Rob Gronkowski. Nearly could have caught it in the back of the end zone after it got tipped. So that could have gone either way. And then this one, like, it was in the guy's hands, and then it just kind of went out there, and Cincinnati escaped with 24-17 victory.
I'm not shocked it was close, but why do teams not do what the Bengals did when the quarterback tries to leap over the line more often? I feel like it's just the quarterback is almost offering you a chance at a free turnover, and we see it happen quite a bit. And it's like, when you're that close to the line, they're not necessarily going to go under and try to rush it as a quarterback sneak, because all you have to do is just put the tip over the line. It's a touchdown. But the Bengals did what I've always wondered why teams don't do it more often, is just wait for the quarterback to jump over the line and knock the ball out. And then Sam Hubbard, with the return of his life, the hometown kid, like you said, Mitch, the Ohio State University grad, tremendous play for him, but the Bengals looked bad too. So now you wonder, you're taking two teams that we thought, I don't know, Mitch, I kind of thought they were the class of the AFC because they both beat the Chiefs this year.
Yeah.
And their offenses both looked better at times. And the Bengals were the hottest team coming into the playoffs, winning their last 8. Now they won 9 in a row, but now we get the Monday Night Football rematch that, unfortunately we never got to see, but this is going to be interesting because I don't know who to give the edge to. You might say to give it to the Bills because they're home, but these teams played such off-brand football from what we're accustomed to seeing, then I don't know what to expect on Sunday.
Yeah, you just reminded me that we are going to get that Monday night matchup again. I didn't even think about that going into this this podcast. You know, they're going to be promoting. I mean, not promoting, but they're going to be like referencing that stuff a lot in the broadcast. So there's that. And then the last AFC game, the one that took everybody by storm and the one that made me look like a complete jackass from the start of the season. Look, I thought Brandon Staley could do good things. I thought Brandon Staley could win Coach of the Year. I thought he could recoup from last season, a season in which you nearly made the playoffs and were one Raiders field goal away from doing so. Well, this year you made it. And you were up 27. It's not the largest comeback. We got kind of mellowed out by it because we saw a 33-0 comeback earlier this season. But that's still really that's a lot to overcome. And Trevor Lawrence, especially when Trevor Lawrence, give credit to him, man. He looked he could have easily just walked off that field after the first half. I wouldn't have blamed him one bit. But the man got it together. Doug Peterson must have put something in his ear to get himself back into form. And he engineered one of the best comebacks in postseason history. And the Jacksonville Jaguars, a team that looked dead 2 months ago and who looked like they were full of nonsense last season, are now in the divisional round. They're going to play. This is kind of like the Browns from 2 years ago. It's like, who thought this team would be here where they are right now? And give credit to them. But, you know, LA has made a couple of moves since then. They fired their offensive coordinator and their quarterback's coach. And I'm wondering if you made the right decisions there. But there have been players since then who have come out and said, hey, we like Coach. We trust him. I'd like to see him get another opportunity. But it's like Stefanski going into this year. There are no excuses now. There's not going to be any more excuses, especially with the quarterback that you have and the offense that you can have, especially with an offense that you kept throwing with in the second half. I get that Herbert's your guy, but you have the leading touchdown rusher. Why don't you go to him more often? Why don't you try it more often? I didn't understand that concept.
I didn't understand it either. At the same time, though, Mitch, we don't have to understand it because it's Brandon Staley. Now, he's a defensive guy. That's where I think people kind of get lost.
Yeah.
He is a former defensive coordinator. People want to fire him. They fired the OC, Mitch, because to your point, why did they not run the ball more? Why did they keep throwing the ball when they had this big lead? And they were up 27-7 at halftime. Can we just officially pump the brakes on Justin Herbert? Can we?
No. Because the guy didn't play bad. He wasn't the reason they lost.
Because what did he what did he do in the second half to make him win? Nothing. He did nothing to help them win that game in the second half.
No. I mean,
if he's this quarterback that's supposed to be the next top 5 quarterback in the NFL that has still won nothing in his career, I'm not ready to anoint him. Everyone's like, I'd take him over Burrow. No, I'd take Joe Burrow over Justin Herbert any day of the week.
I take him over Burrow, but Herbert's still at least a top maybe 8, 10 quarterback.
In terms of talent, I'll say he's top 10, but
Sure.
I'm not ready to anoint him because he had multiple opportunities to put that game away and he couldn't. Meanwhile, on the other side, Mitch, there was conversation of, do the Jaguars go to a backup quarterback to start the second half? Because Trevor Lawrence joined elite company, in which Big Ben from 2020 against the Browns and throwing 4 interceptions in one playoff game. Yet they came back. They did what they had to do. Travis Etienne, 109 yards rushing, Mitch. They were down 20 points at halftime. Mm-hmm. That just goes to show you don't have to pass every single play when you're trailing in a game, Kevin Stefanski. All right, back to this game. Trevor Lawrence, I don't know what he threw for in the first half, Mitch, but 28 of 47 for 288 and 4 touchdowns. And it's like as soon as they got that touchdown to make it 27-7, something switched.
Yeah.
Something switched in that stadium between the two teams. And it's like the Jaguars may went to the locker room and said, hey, it's the Chargers. They're going to do something stupid because they've done something stupid for the past year. And now Trevor Lawrence is still undefeated on a Saturday in his entire football career.
Lawrence misfired on 12 of his first 16 throws. Like, yeah, it didn't look pretty in that first half, but he got it moved around. As soon as Cameron Dicker missed that field goal to put him on more, I'm like, all right, they're coming back. There's no this is the sign. This is what's gonna happen. But yeah, and kudos to the Jaguars. It'd be interesting if they can go into Jacksonville, into Kansas City this weekend and shake it up to make it a little interesting in these playoffs, because the Chiefs, I would think, are looking at this wild card round thinking these are the teams that are gonna take us on, especially when you have home field advantage. Well, except for the possibility of the neutral site AFC title game, which is still up for possibility because the Bills and the Chiefs are still in it. So that'll be very interesting to see if the NFL, if they have to go that way. But I want to get your picks in the next segment. I want to get my picks for this coming weekend's divisional round, and we'll get back to it right after these messages.
The Furby Electric Supply Company has bright ideas for your home. Save money by converting to energy-efficient electrical products or add ambiance with beautiful lighting features. It begins with a professional consultation and a visit to the Furby Lighting Showroom. Then certified Furby contractors complete your project right and on time. Since 1934, 4 generations have built a reputation of quality and trust, and they offer emergency services too. Just visit Furby.com. That's F-U-R-B-A-Y. The Furby Electric Supply Company.
You asked for it and we listened. Buckeye Career Center is now offering Certified Nail Technician as an adult education program. This 216-hour course begins in November and will run Tuesday through Thursday evenings from 5 to 9 p.m. Learn manicures, pedicures, infection control, salon operations, and more. Other part-time certification courses starting this fall include phlebotomy and welding. Call 330-339-2288 to register or visit BuckeyeCareerCenter.org for more information.
If you're looking for a new or pre-owned car or truck, why not see the Parkway Auto Group? Parkway is a special group of automotive experts with 8 brands to satisfy your needs. Come see the difference at the Parkway Auto Group on Commercial Parkway in Dover. 8 brands and 1 family. It's Parkway Auto Group.
Fall is in the air and part-time career enhancement courses at Buckeye Career Center are on the horizon. Registration is now open for Introduction to Beekeeping, Basic Small Engine Repair, and Sign Language. These part-time offerings run on Tuesday evenings and begin in November. Let Buckeye Career Center help you learn a new skill or advance your current skill set. Call 330-339-2288 for more information or to reserve your seat in one of these or our other part-time classes.
You matter. Everyone plays a part. We all have a role. Each of us can make a difference. You do matter, and the best way to have a positive impact is to pay it forward. With each of us helping one another to cope, feel better, and know that we belong. Pass on the positivity today. Tell someone else they matter too. Alt Care.
Alt Care, Alt Care. Where you matter.
We all have 206 things in common. Our bones keep us up and moving. And we at Cleveland Clinic Union Hospital care about every single one of them. From the tip of your finger to a brand new hip, our orthopedic experts will keep you going while keeping you safe. For every break and breakthrough, for every bone and joint, for every care in the world. Get the care you need when and where you need it. Visit unionhospital.org.
And we're back here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Mitch Spinell alongside Mitchell Balla. Mitch, before we get into our divisional round picks for this week, I think it was announced this wild card weekend, our halftime entertainment for this upcoming Super Bowl 57 in one Rihanna, who hasn't put up a lot of music lately, but is going to be performing. Thoughts on that?
She doesn't need to put out a lot of music, Mitch, because her old music is still fire. I am very excited for Rihanna.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of the ones that I really liked. I really liked Disturbia back in the day. She had a couple of ones in there, like a few with other artists. I really liked last year's show with the rappers Eminem, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, 50 Cent, Kendrick. So that was cool. And I hope it's a thing. Like when I go to a Super Bowl party or if I'm out for the Super Bowl, I don't watch a ton of the halftime show unless it gets my attention. But I'm hoping this show will be a good one. So now we go into the divisional round picks for the upcoming weekend of NFL playoff games. And I'm going to start off in the AFC. I'm going to start off with the big one here. Well, the second biggest one, I would think, based on people's reactions for the next one. We have the 4th-seeded Jacksonville Jaguars, fresh off that win over the Chargers, versus the top seed Kansas City Chiefs. The Jaguars are 8.5-point underdogs going into this one. Andy Reid is 28-5, coming off of a bye for his career, and that includes playoff games. It's I know what the Jaguars did last week, and I will give them all the props in the world. It is hard to win in Arrowhead. It is very, very difficult.
Well, we've only seen one team do it in the playoffs.
Bengals did it last year. Patriots did it.
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes' first year. Yeah.
So that's been it. And I like the Jags. It's actually kind of crazy to me, Mitch, because this over-under is at 52.5 points.
Mm-hmm.
That's more than what the Bills and Bengals is. And to me, when I think of prolific offenses, I think the Bills and Bengals are better combined than what the Chiefs and the Jaguars would be, but we'll have to see what happens there. But I am going to take the Chiefs. I think the Jags will be able to keep it close. For the most part, the spreads, Mitch, besides the game last night, everything was intact for what the spreads were set by Vegas in terms of all of the other games this past weekend. So I do think the Jaguars will be able to cover 8.5, but I will take the Chiefs winning this and going to yet again another AFC Championship game.
I mean, yeah, necessarily not yet again, because they didn't make it last year. If they would have made it last year, it would have been what, 1, 2, 3, 4 in a row, maybe 5. I'm not sure. Yeah, they lost in the divisional round last year. No,
they lost the Bengals in the AFC Championship.
I don't know why I thought it was the divisional round. I thought it was all right. But my other question too was, do they think it's going to be like 45-7 based on that line? I don't know. That's interesting compared to the other game, which is, as you mentioned, the Bengals going up against the Bills. You know, it'll be played in Buffalo this time. We'll actually hopefully see a full game this time with nobody getting seriously hurt. This is going to be a curious one because we mentioned in the previous segment, both teams didn't have their greatest weeks, but they are still considered two of the top teams in the AFC, if not all of football. We talked about in the previous segment, Josh Allen, if he can keep those interceptions down, if he can keep those turnovers down overall for Buffalo, they could have a very good offensive day. I'm just curious as to if Buffalo can do that, because we saw Cincinnati force a few turnovers on Baltimore. We've seen them be able to do so over the last few weeks of the season. And I don't know, man. Part of me is kind of leaning to Cincinnati at this rate because of what Buffalo could do if they're not at 100% play.
This is literally a toss. I don't care that the spread's 4.5. I don't care that the over-under is 48.5. Like, to me, Mitch, these teams are so evenly matched. Mm-hmm. I think what's going to happen is a certain somebody is going to be in attendance on Sunday at the game in Buffalo.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that is going to really get the Bills fired up. I also am intrigued, completely off topic. I am intrigued to see what the Bills fans are like towards Cincinnati, because remember, this was just something we had never seen before.
Yeah.
Cincinnati did a ton in terms of helping out DeMar Hamlin and everything. So, and the Buffalo fans, Mitch, are some of the best in the NFL. So I'm intrigued to see what happens there, but I do anticipate and will not be shocked, because obviously I don't know what the overall health of DeMar Hamlin is, but I am kind of expecting him to be in Buffalo for this game in person, his first time returning in person in front of fans, and just not playing, but just as somebody not in uniform.
Yeah. I think Buffalo, their people kind of may have went to him maybe this morning, and it was after they saw Cincinnati won the game. It's like, buddy, you're coming this weekend.
Yeah.
We're gonna do what was it, that one time where the Chargers were playing the Bengals in the AFC title game, and the Bengals didn't wear sleeves in the cold, even though it was like minus something, and to psych them out. That would be an amazing psych out if the Bills can pull that off. Yeah, but I still will hold Cincinnati to that, especially because this is an interesting stat I found from Brooklyn Gaucho on Twitter. Fourth quarter statistics for both quarterbacks. Josh Allen in the fourth quarter this year, 58% completion percentage, 900 yards passing, 6 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Joe Burrow, 70% completions, 1,000 yards passing, 11 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. And I can tell from the look on your face that somebody has rattled off these numbers to you already.
Mitch, I am very aware of what Joe Burrow can do. I knew those numbers already. I want to take the Bengals. I really do, because I truthfully believe that the Bengals are the hottest team still in the NFL, because at this point, we mentioned it all season long, there is no such thing as style points in the NFL. I just don't know if I can take the Bengals on the road here, and what could very well shape up to be one of the best atmospheres we're going to see in NFL playoff history in terms of everything going into it. And because it's in Buffalo, I think I'm going to have to take the Bills, but I'm not going to be shocked here if the Bengals win. And Mitch, this might bite me. I feel like I need to see what happens Saturday first, but I'm pretty confident that whoever wins this game is going to the Super Bowl for the AFC.
Wow.
I think that Kansas City thinks that they are going to be able to somehow figure out a way to beat Cincinnati and Arrowhead, when Cincinnati, I think, has this mentality and confidence and swagger in them, knowing that we have not lost the Chiefs. It's not going to happen now. When meanwhile, Patrick Mahomes is probably like, what do I have to do to beat this team? And the Bills won't have to play them in Arrowhead, Mitch. I believe from what I read, it has already been decided the neutral site game would be in Atlanta, where the Falcons play, if it is the Bills and the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. So for the Bills, not only did you go win there in Arrowhead this year and prove you can beat them, but now you get to play them on a neutral site, which I don't know the actual mileage, but I would think a flight from Buffalo or New York in general to Atlanta is a little bit easier than Kansas City. I am confident that whoever wins this game is going to the Super Bowl to represent the AFC, but I'm still taking the Buffalo Bills this weekend.
All right, you got me like really dialed in on this one. So the mileage from Buffalo to Kansas City is just under 900 miles. It's about a 13-hour, 22-minute flight. And that doesn't make sense. I would think maybe a drive. Yeah, a drive. Kansas City to Atlanta, that's 11 hours, 53 minutes. That's 800 miles. So it is a shorter trek from Kansas City than it is from Buffalo. But what I was going to get at with actual football is, it's going to be tricky. It's going to be tricky, but I'm hoping for a very good game. I'm hoping for a classic like we got last year in Arrowhead between the Chiefs and the Bills. That's what I was thinking of with the divisional round thing, not the Bengals. So they go over to Philadelphia and the Giants. Philadelphia has already beaten the Giants twice this year. They've beaten them pretty handily. The first time was 48-22. And the last game was 22-16, which doesn't seem like it's a blowout, but they were up 19-3, like halfway through the fourth quarter, and the Giants nearly came back. I think what the Giants have the advantage of, obviously coming off the momentum of a win from last week, is the way Philadelphia closed out its season and where some of their players are at right now. The last 3 games for Philly have not been impressive compared to what they've done for the rest of the year. They lost to the Cowboys in week 16. They lost to the Saints in week 17, and they lost to they beat the Giants barely in week 18. And Jalen Hurts, by the time this game comes in, will only have played 1 game in this past month, and he didn't even look great in that. So you mentioned before too, the Giants were missing multiple starters during the Eagles win before. Could that maybe lead to the Giants possibly closing that gap in what is currently right now a 7.5 point spread in favor of Philadelphia?
Yes. And I'm a prisoner of the moment because we got to see one team play this weekend and Philly got a week off, which was much needed for Philly. Let's not downplay that, Mitch, because this is a team that had a couple nagging injuries. They had Jalen Hurts, who had not played his best. So the Eagles needed it, but I'm taking the Giants because I don't know what Jalen Hurts looks like, because he wasn't just banged up, Mitch. It was his shoulder was so injured that they really tried to hold him out, hoping they didn't need to play him at all. And he still didn't look that great against the backups in New York. Now, I think the flip side of this is we know some of the top fan bases in all of sports. Philly fans are ruthless and they have a true home field advantage. Now, I do think that is going to play a factor in this, but with how Brian Daboll has this team, Mitch, I'm definitely taking the Giants to cover the 7.5. I think this game is going to potentially come down to a field goal. I'm going to ride momentum and say the New York Giants beat the Eagles this week.
Boy, oh boy, that would be the upside of the week if it happens. I don't care what happens with the other game. I mean, Jacksonville would be the top one, but then this one would be number 2, and this is the one that I think could happen compared to the Jacksonville Kansas City game. I feel like I'm gonna have to stick with the Eagles just because it's a safer bet. Although a number of those names that were not for or in the second Eagles Giants game that we talked about, Leonard Williams, the defensive lineman, cornerback Adoree Jackson, safety Xavier McKinney. Adoree Jackson's been a pretty solid corner for the Giants this year. He ended up playing against the Vikings in the game in which he was able to handle Justin Jefferson pretty well. This one, he would likely go up against A.J. Brown. And if he keeps him in check against a not 100% Jalen Hurts, then that could be a very interesting dynamic. But I still think that Philadelphia could win this one. And then we have the big one, for me at least, because I like this classic rivalry. Number 3, Dallas against number 2, San Francisco. I would argue, Mitch, that even with the Giants and Eagles game, the winner of this game might be the Super Bowl favorite. Because the 49ers are on a tear. Dallas proves that it belongs in these playoffs with a win against Tampa Bay. I know you can say, oh, they were 8-9. Dallas put up a crooked number on them. They're good. And I know what happened last year where Dallas let the clock run out on them, but I'm curious to see what Dallas could bring to the table against a 49ers team that looks like it's running on all cylinders right now. Like everything is well oiled. The machine is in check. It's been well inspected. And if Dallas could get to the NFC title game, though, that would really shut up a lot of the critics of how they can never win in the playoffs, how you can always count them out, at least for my side, at least. I know there's people who hate the Cowboys enough that they'll never get over that, but who knows?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the only thing that would possibly change your comment here would be if the Eagles come out and play like they did maybe the first 8 games of the season where they looked like the best team in the NFL.
Sure.
I do think that the winner of this game in the NFC between the Niners and the Cowboys could very well be favored in the NFC Championship, no matter who they play. Obviously, if they play Philly, they probably won't be favored because home teams get 3, yada, yada, yada. But these are the best 2 defenses left from the eye test. Maybe the numbers don't back that up, but, Philly's had a great defense this year. This is going to be an entertaining game. It really is. And I'm excited to watch it. I'm excited I'm not a Cowboys fan. I don't know if I'd say I'm a hater. I just don't like watching them win because I just don't like Jerry Jones and the fact that the Cowboys are America's team and they've never won anything in our lifetime, Mitch. This is just going to be fun because you're talking about 2 of the premier pass rushers in the NFL, and Nick Bosa for the Niners and Micah Parsons, who, Mitch, defensive player of the year, probably in the NFL this year. It's probably one of those 2, if we're being honest, Nick Bosa or Micah Parsons. And so you're going to see 2 of the premier pass rushers. You're going to see some stars on both sides of the ball for both teams. And you're going to see, does it take you signing a quarterback to a lot of money to win games, or is it going to be find the quarterback that fits the system the best, like Brock Purdy? I'm excited to see what this looks like in San Francisco. I will lean with the home team and San Francisco. I just don't know if the Dallas Cowboys are going to be able to move the ball efficiently and consistently against a team like the Niners. So I'm going to go San Fran.
It's interesting. The biggest thing I saw from San Francisco is how will they match up against a team like Dallas? Mainly how will they match up against a lot of these teams that will be going down to the wire in these NFC playoffs? Because the 49ers, as great as they've been this year, and they've earned a lot of the respect that they've gotten, have had the easiest strength of schedule this year. They have not faced a lot of amazing teams in the NFL this year. This will be the first time where they face a Philadelphia, possibly. This could be a time where first time they face the Giants, and this will be the first time that they face Dallas. Looking back at some of the wins they had during their streak during the regular season, that one started off after back-to-back losses to the Falcons and the Chiefs. The Chiefs one, they looked rough in 44-23. But that was pre-Brock Purdy, obviously. Then this one, you have wins against the Rams, win against the Chargers. That's one. I'll give you that one. Win against the Cardinals, win against the Saints, win against the Dolphins. I'll give you that one, maybe. Win against the Buccaneers, 35-7. I feel like I should give you that one because they're in the playoffs, but I don't think I can. Seahawks, sure. Washington, Vegas, Arizona again. It's interesting to see that San Francisco has done what they had to do in winning these games, but I don't know. When you get into the thick of the playoffs, when every team you're facing now is worthy of being in these playoffs, and really none of the teams in the NFC right now, save for maybe the Giants, are this unbelievably scrappy underdog that's just kind of happy to be here. Like, these teams are here for a reason. Philadelphia's here for a reason. The Giants are the closest thing to a scrappy underdog, but they still had a good run this year. Dallas is here to win, and I'm curious as to see what could become of a Niners team that's going up against a Dallas team that has momentum, that prove that this offense can work. You obviously still have some issues at kicker, but time could tell whether or not that'll be long lasting. And if you're going to expose a 7th round draft pick into having a bad game at the worst possible time, this is it. Because I love the story of Brock Purdy. I kind of want him to have this amazing success story where he becomes the starter long term. But if Dallas can expose the sort of things that made him nearly not a pick in the draft, nearly made him an undrafted free agent, then that could be up to their advantage, and they could end up facing one of their division rivals next week.
So who are you taking?
I think I'm going to go. I think I'm going to go with Dallas. I think it's going to be very, very close. And part of it is I just want to do something a little bit different, but at the same time, I'm very interested in seeing how San Francisco responds to a team that, is one of the top teams in the NFC. They've kind of been eating up on a lot of poor teams this year. The division was rough this year overall. I mean, you could say Seattle had a good year, and they were able to beat them pretty handily in the second half. That first half, you kind of wondered what was going on there, but LA was bad. The Cardinals were bad. You saw a lot of the teams I mentioned before had losing records or borderline 500 records. So when you looked at some of the matchups they had were early in the year, you were losing to teams like Kansas City. You were losing teams like Atlanta. You were losing teams like Denver, Chicago. And again, it's a little bit different because you were playing different quarterbacks at that time. So the schemes were different. The way you were playing might have been very contrasting, but I'm curious. I'm curious if Dallas can step up to a challenge and finally make it back to the NFC title game for the first time since 1997, 1998, somewhere around there. It's been a while. And it could be interesting to see an all NFC East NFC title game. So those are all the picks that we have. We don't usually have this whole slate of games. You're going to say something before we go to break?
I just want to make sure we have the picks correct, because as we noted at the beginning of the show, I will be out for our show later this week and on Monday next week. We're both on the Chiefs.
Yes.
You were taking the Eagles?
Yes, I'll take the Eagles. You take the Giants.
And are you taking the Bengals?
I'll take the Bengals. You take the Bills.
Okay, and I'm taking the Bills. So the only game we're in agreement on right now is the Chiefs over the Jaguars.
Yes.
Other than that, Mitch, you and I are split. We both went 4-2 this past weekend in the wild card round. We both picked the Vikings. Both picked the Vikings to win. They lost, and then everybody in our pick'em picked the Buccaneers to win. They lost.
Oh,
so
well, that's what happens when you base it off of a reputation, and I'm hoping to have that reputation be broken here these coming playoffs, not for the sake of I want the Cowboys to win, but just say, you know what, shake it up. It's been a while since we've had these differences in the playoffs. So what are your guys' predictions? Be sure to leave them in the comments below, or we'll probably put out an anchor poll here in just a little bit. But we'll be back right after these messages. Hey there, folks. This is Mitch Spinell, and I want to give you guys a quick message regarding 988. If you don't know what 988 is, it was created to make it easier to remember how to get help in the event of a mental health or addiction crisis. This is different than a medical, fire, or police emergency where 911 should still be called immediately. 988 connects you with Stark County's Crisis Center, which is equipped to help people in emotional distress or experiencing a mental health or addiction crisis. So remember, 911 for medical, fire, and police emergency help, and 988 for support in overcoming a mental health crisis in Stark County.
It takes a lot of practice to have a winning team. Albin Title has over 100 years of combined experience handling real estate, title, and escrow transactions. They serve Tuscarawas, Stark, Carroll, Harrison counties, and more. So choose Albin Title for your next home refinance, sale, or purchase. They'll get it done quickly and professionally. Contact Albin Title at 330-334-5800 or visit their website albintitle.com. Let them put their experience to work for you.
Hard work is something you're accustomed to. Van Nostrand Young understands that principle. Our access is achieved with organizations like Grange Insurance. Safety and prevention specialists utilize our VanCan assessments process to ensure that you and your colleagues are in the best hands. You want the safest environment for your business, and we can guide you there.
Call Van Nostrand Young Insurance in North Canton at 330-497-1867.
If you're purchasing a new home, the team at Hartzler's Quality Housing is here to help. Take advantage of record low interest rates to make your new home a reality. Locally owned and operated since 1978, Hartzler's Quality Housing has the experience to guide you through the process. You'll find a wide selection of model homes on site to fit any budget. Open 6 days a week just off I-77. You can also visit them online at hartzlers.com. Hartzler's Quality Housing. Quality from start to finish.
You deserve the best. And at Ferris Chevrolet, Buick, Cadillac, Toyota, that's what you get. We consider you, the customer, to be part of our family. Anybody can make promises, but when you visit Ferris, you get the Ferris deal from a Ferris wheel. So if you're looking for a car, truck, or van, think Ferris.
When others treat your fries as an afterthought, all you're left with are cold, soggy fries. That's why Wendy's new fries are ones you won't forget, guaranteed to be hot and crispy, or we'll replace them. We're talking natural cut, skin-on fries, perfectly seasoned with a hint of sea salt. In fact, they're even preferred almost 2-to-1 over McDonald's. These are fries so hot and crispy, they beg a new question.
What would you like with your fries?
Try them today, only at Wendy's.
At participating U.S. Wendy's, taste preference based on a national taste test by an independent research company.
Back here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show, Mitch Pinnell alongside Mitchell Balla for our final segment here. We talk about some other stuff besides football because we've been doing that for the last 3 segments. Mitch, I want to talk Cavs because we saw this team go through a bit of an up and down this week, mainly focusing in on the game they had yesterday, which was Martin Luther King Day, an afternoon game against the New Orleans Pelicans, where for the first 3 quarters, it didn't look great. The offense is kind of sputtering at times. The 3-point shooting was bad. Free throw shooting was bad. And then Darius Garland was able to turn it around for Cleveland and win that game. And that's in the same week where they're able to beat the Portland Trailblazers on the road in that road trip, in which they went 2-3 because they ended up losing to Denver, Utah, and then most recently the Minnesota Timberwolves. That was the one where I was like, why are we losing to this team? Yeah. But New Orleans got the victory. No Zion Williamson, though, but they still had some good performances. CJ McCollum, Jonas Valanciunas. This is the Cavs' 11th comeback win this season, by the way, where they've been down by double digits and then come back and won. I mean, it's great that they're able to do so, and I've seen that in person a couple of times. I saw it against the Suns a few weeks ago. I've seen it against some other teams, but does it get kind of to a point where you just kind of want them to get out to a lead and keep it for the rest of the way? Obviously, you want that for your team always, but I mean, does that give you concern at all? It's like where it's like they get off these slow starts at times and they're able to ramp it up at certain points, because sometimes they've done that this year and they haven't been able to come back.
Absolutely. When we've had other episodes here the past few weeks, over the past month, I told you it's probably one of my biggest concerns is because when you play teams that are better than you, and there are teams better than the Cavs, I still think the Cavs are in the upper echelon, maybe not the top tier of best teams in the NBA, let alone the Eastern Conference. They're not going to let you do that. And it's awesome to see that you're never out of a game, but at the same time, you have to be able to play a full 48 minutes if you want to, if we're going to sit here and talk about not only the Cavs winning a playoff series, but potentially winning 2 and seeing how deep they can go in the playoffs. At the same time, the mentality that they're never out of a game is awesome to have, which is why you got to have a happy medium, because I don't want to see them get down every game, but at the same time, knowing that they are down, Mitch, you said it 11 times now they've come back this year. They did it again yesterday. And you mentioned without Zion Williamson, Brandon Ingram also didn't play, but Donovan Mitchell didn't play in the second half, Mitch.
No.
Now, it does not look like he is going to play tomorrow. It looks like a report out of Cleveland today was he did not practice today. His status for not only the game, but even flying with the team to Memphis for that game against the Grizzlies on Wednesday is up in the air. It's a regular season game. He's already played a lot of minutes, Mitch. I am all in favor for him sitting this. Plus, let's remember, without Donovan Mitchell playing, this is practically the same Cavs team from last year, Mitch, that got off to a fire start and beat some of the top teams in the NBA.
Yep.
And Ricky Rubio is back. Now, he's still on a minutes restriction, whether that's going up every game by a minute or two, or whether it's set for, X number of minutes for a full week, and then it improves week to week. It's hard to say. I think it's with Evan. I hope groin strains can be, something that lingers, which is why I'm all in favor of resting him. But what's really tough, Mitch, is your next, 3-4 games are all against playoff caliber teams. And without looking ahead, the Memphis game, I think, is going to really give us a true idea of where this Cavs team is without Donovan Mitchell. But I'm not against him sitting, even if it's not that bad, because I want to see what this team can do. Because I sent you something over the weekend on Twitter, and you kind of scoffed at it. And I said, I didn't say it. I know somebody that did say it. The Darius Garland's not good because, he's not averaging all these points. Well, Mitch, he's still averaging exactly what he averaged last year without Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah.
And we've seen multiple times this year, Darius Garland is still very much capable of going off. He had the game. Now, it resulted in a loss earlier this season to the Brooklyn Nets, in which he scored 46, but he is more than capable of taking over a game anytime he wants to. I also think this is a very great opportunity for Evan Mobley to grow up. I think he grew up a little bit. I don't think he took the jump that you or myself or other Cavs fans expected to see in his second year in the NBA. But with your superstar out, can you step up now? And yesterday he performed very well against the Pelicans. Can he continue to step up against somebody like Jaren Jackson for the Grizzlies? And then you play Golden State at home on Friday. I mean, Mitch, your next four at Memphis, home against Golden State, home against Milwaukee in a back-to-back, and then at New York. Those are 4 playoff teams right now before you kind of hit a spurt in which you could probably win your next 4 without Donovan, or if not, not all 4, but maybe this isn't a bad time for Donovan to have gotten that injury. And maybe the Cavs are being more precautionary than you would normally be because of where you're at in the season. I'm excited. I am concerned with us blowing leads, but I think the big thing now is if Donovan's going to sit and they're going to sit him for a little bit, Mitch, do the Cavs pull a trigger on some of these trades they've been rumored in? It sounds like Karis LeVert is the name that they've been looking to shop in terms of trade packages. Whether you want to look at Shams or Woj, or I still follow Brian Windhorst closely because he still has that tie to Cleveland. It seems like Bogdanovich for the Pistons is absolutely no shot of happening. And just recently, Mitch, it's rumored that the Cavs are involved in a potential 3-team deal that would bring Malik Beasley from the Jazz here, send Karis LeVert, I believe, was that to Atlanta?
Yes.
And John Collins then to Utah, which I would be all in favor of that trade because Beasley may not be the scorer. Well, he probably is a little more consistent in scoring, but he's not going to get you what we saw LeVert do early in the season in Boston or other games. But for the Cavs to be successful and be able to make a run past the first round, if they were to get a top 3 or 4 seed, they're going to need a 3-and-D wing. And Malik Beasley is that sizable 3 they have over Okoro, who's just 6'4". But to pose your question back to you, are you kind of nervous and kind of sick and tired of the Cavs getting behind and then trying to come back and what they do is mount these avalanches to come back and win basketball games?
As long as they're winning the games, then I'm kind of fine with it. My biggest concern is just them. Eventually it'll get to a point where they keep getting down and they're not able to make these massive comebacks like they have been. So yeah, that I don't have that concern as of now because unlike Caps teams of the past, and even sometimes unlike compared to the team last season, they're able to make enough differences to get these victories against some pretty solid teams. That Beasley trade, by the way, that you mentioned was reported by NBA insider Mark Stein. It would rid the Hawks of the last 3 years of John Collins's $125 million contract. And apparently there was a report yesterday, I don't know if you saw this, from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, that the Hawks are in such disarray right now that they might even be considering moving on from Trae Young because the team is underperforming this year. This was a team, by the way, that 2 years ago beat the Sixers surprisingly in a game 7, exposed Ben Simmons to the world what he is, and made the Eastern Conference Finals. So, the team's not where they want to be right now, and they might get rid of the head coach, they might get rid of the general manager, and they might get rid of their star player who, I don't know. It's tricky for them right now, but we'll see where Atlanta goes.
They also made a big trade in the offseason to get DeJounte Murray from the Spurs. I mean, Mitch, this is a team that thought they were right there, and they went in, whether you want to say all in or not, they traded for an all-star to pair with their all-star. I would say that means they went all in, and they're a team right now that's 500, 22-22. They sit at 9th in the Eastern Conference standings as we record this today, a day after MLK Day, in which, there was afternoon games, so I don't have to worry about that today with teams playing.
Right.
This is a team that's kind of caught in the middle where expectations were all the way up here and they're underperforming. It's hard, and there's still ways to go before the trade deadline. This is a team that's more than capable of turning it around too. Let's be honest here. This team could very well turn it around. And would you be shocked if I said they go from 9th to 6th or 5th in the Eastern Conference? Because I wouldn't.
Maybe not, but even then, it's not at the level that I think Atlanta wants to be in, even in a good Eastern Conference. This is, again, a team that made a bit of a run 2 years ago. Thought they could make that jump. They haven't. Now you're looking at the likes of Cleveland getting better than them. The likes of Boston making that big jump back. Milwaukee and Philadelphia are still atop the mix. So they're kind of stuck there. And as far as Beasley goes, I like what he can bring. I think he is a better 3-point shooter than LeVert is right now. I just wish he was a little bit taller and even more better of a 3-point shooter than what he is currently. He could bring something good for the Cavaliers, but it'd be that much sweeter if we could get a little bit more of that into the mix. So there is that. And finally, this is the topic that I just found during our show, and it's very interesting to me because I kind of forgot that we're going to be seeing the release of this upcoming Baseball Hall of Fame balloting coming up here. We have one player currently headed for the Hall of Fame this year, Mitch. Fred McGriff, the crime dog, which I was very happy when they did that because this is a guy that's only 7 home runs from 500 career home runs, which automatically gets you in the Hall of Fame. And I'm like, really? You're going to let 7 home runs separate this guy who was an all-star for many years? At the same time, I'm like, yeah, he gets in before the likes of Barry Bonds and Roger. That's a whole other thing. But this is an interesting ballot this year because we only have 2 players who are within their last or second to last years on the 10-year ballot. A lot of guys who have been on the ballot for a number of years, a lot of guys who haven't been able to make the jump to get in. I mean, I think it was 2 years ago, we had nobody make the list. And it was just this last year where David Ortiz was the only eligible player among the regular crop of players. So now the Hall of Fame has a decision to make. And I'm among those people who really hope that the writers who vote on this, actually put in substantial ballots. I hate when we hear about these guys who turn in these blank ballots. And it's just such an annoyance to me at times, but it's going to be a trickier one, I think, than in years past, because we've moved past the controversial players who are now no longer on the ballot, it seems. And now we are going into, well, for the most part, we'll get to these guys in a second. Now we're moving on to the ones who are kind of be borderline players, I would say. This is a very tricky ballot because we're going off of a lot of guys last year who weren't able to get in, a lot of guys who I very much liked watching play over the years. And I want to see if we can make each of our own 10-man ballots and maybe even make a combined ballot to see who would get into our baseball halls of fame, our Cooperstowns, if you will. So we start off here. And again, there's a lot of good players at the top of this list. I'm looking on baseballreference.com, baseball-reference.com. And the guy who ended up on his 6th year on the ballot, I believe had 63.2% last year, is longtime Cardinals, and I think for a couple other things too, Cardinals standout and Reds standout, Scott Rowland. Scott Rowland is a guy who for years was one of the most, I mean, he was never the star player for a lot of these teams, but he would always bring just a little bit more to a lot of teams that were very, very good. Obviously, he was part of that 2006 Cardinals championship team. He was a 7-time All-Star. He was an 8-time Gold Glover, Silver Slugger winner, Rookie of the Year, over 2,000 hits, over 1,200 RBIs. That's really, 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 really good. Is that great to you, Mitch? Is that a guy you can put on your ballot?
It is not.
Ah,
Which I am the person that thinks that the MLB Hall of Fame does it wrong.
okay.
And I truthfully believe that there are a lot of gray areas in determining who should be in the Hall of Fame and who should not be in the Hall of Fame.
Okay.
If you're not willing to put the best players of all time, whether they cheated allegedly or cheated provenly or did something against the rules, like a Pete Rose, then we cannot be putting in guys that did not have the same type of numbers these other guys put up, if that makes sense.
Okay.
If there was a Hall of Fame of very good, very, very good, Scott Rowland's in. I'm in the minority that I can't put these guys in because you haven't put the best players of all time in. And my reasoning is Barry Bonds allegedly took steroids. Mitch, if you look at his career from when he allegedly started taking them, his first half of his career is still a Hall of Fame career. And what a lot of people don't understand is when you mention steroids, baseball's still a hard game. Steroids don't make you better in terms of being able to hit a fastball or off speed pitch. It just has other side effects to like a Barry Bonds allegedly have more power and juice to be able to drive the ball out of the ballpark. And I can't get behind some of these other guys until you acknowledge the fact that you're strictly not putting in Hall of Fame caliber players because of an agenda you have, because of something that is out there that necessarily has not been factually proven.
Right.
And so that's where I'm at. I have a hard time knowing that the all-time hits leader in baseball history is not in the Hall of Fame.
Okay.
And he did not take steroids, but he did violate a rule. But at the same time, he didn't throw games. He bet on himself, which to me, it's still wrong by the rule. But at the same time, I think that's pretty cool. You bet on yourself to go out and perform. And you still go out and perform. You put your money where your mouth is. That's literally the definition of putting your money where your mouth is. And these other guys that, Mitch, growing up, we get to see the tail end of some of these guys' careers, and they're not in the Hall. Even if you made their own wing in the Baseball Hall of Fame and put asterisks next to them, that's fine, but they have to be represented some way, shape, or form in the Hall of Fame because they have had such an impact on the game of baseball.
Okay, so how about this? I know that we're kind of cheating with these rules here, and my whole thing was we were going to make a ballot out of these guys who are currently up for debate. What I'm thinking we do is we make a ballot where we include all the names that have kind of been cast aside by the writers. So and I'll even put it up on the screen here. I even filled out a couple of ones that we would probably put on our ballots, starting off with the 3 names I have listed, the 3 names I have listed for you, because we would obviously both have Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens listed on here. You would have Pete Rose as well. I would put Pete Rose as well. And I would even put in Curt Schilling, amidst all of the controversies we've seen from him over the last few years, where he even got involved with the vote process, where he's even like, don't even vote for me, don't even try. I'm part of that. The people that where it's like, what did you do on the field?
Yeah.
You won 2 World Series championships. You were among the top pitchers of your era. You are memorized for a red paint, blood stained sock, whatever it was, against one of the greatest comebacks in sports history. So for me, I can put you in the Hall of Fame. I know some other people can't. I can do that. I could put him in for you if you want. I could even put in. Yes. I'll even put in a guy who's been dead for almost a century now. Maybe not even a century now, but I'm going to even put in this guy, because if you look at the movie, watch the movie Field of Dreams, you can tell from the numbers that he put up in that World Series that it was not a guy who seemed like he was trying to lose. But I'll just put Shoeless Joe Jackson in there as well, and I'll do Schilling for you. So we're up to 5 on the list. This is basically our version of like why we've kind of become disenchanted with the voting process sometimes, because it has created this whole headache of a voting process sometimes that we don't see in basketball. We don't see it in football very often, even though there's been a number of cases where in football was guys who have had their demons. But I don't know. It's a tricky process for me. And looking at it now, have we gone through all the names that would warrant a Hall of Fame vote, scandals and all? We have Bonds, we have Clemens, we have Schilling, we have Rose, we have Shoeless. I have Shoeless Joe. I don't know if you want him on there as well.
I mean, if we're being honest, he's a Hall of Famer. Absolutely. And just quickly, the point you made, Mitch, and the reason I have such gripe with the Hall of Fame in terms of baseball is they are allowed to take their feelings into consideration when voting. You mentioned NFL and NBA. They don't necessarily do that. We're talking about a voting system that literally did not vote Ken Griffey Jr. unanimously because he wore his hat backwards, which is now one of the most iconic things in terms of baseball symbols.
Yes,
if we're being honest here.
To be fair, that they've done that for other players as well. Derek Jeter was not a 100% person in as well. I think some guys just do it for the sake of they want to be special. They want to be different. They may genuinely think that this is not a Hall of Fame worthy player, but I genuinely don't know. Only Mariano Rivera, I think, so far has been. There might have been another one as well, but I can't think of it at the. Yeah, him too. But yeah, that's where it gets interesting, and we'll get to one of the names here that would be Hall of Fame worthy, but it's a different context. Going through the rest of the names here on the list, which I have on the left side here, we have Todd Helton. We're already past Scott Rowland. I personally could include a Scott Rowland on here, but I'll just go against. I'll leave it off there. Todd Helton, longtime Colorado Rocky, was probably Mr. Rocky if, in all things considered. 316 batting average, 2,500 hits, 369 home runs, 1,400 RBIs, 5-time All-Star, 3 Gold Gloves, 4 Silver Sluggers. I mean, this was a guy who wasn't just a guy who had his numbers inflated by playing in a thin air place like Denver. The guy could genuinely hit for contact. He had one of the best batting eyes we've seen in the last, 30 years. I could put him in. I don't know about you.
I think he has a case for sure. He's not a first ballot Hall of Famer in my opinion. And that's where I think things kind of get sticky here when we're talking about the list that we both have up there.
Right.
I would pass on him right now.
Okay.
But to your point, he definitely is somebody that defied the odds of, he played in the thin air in Colorado where all these people hit home runs. Like, no, it didn't matter where he was. He was a feared hitter, whether he was playing in Boston or whether he was playing in Minnesota. You know what I mean? It wasn't just in Colorado. He was a feared hitter.
Right. Okay. So this is a guy and by the way, Helton is in his 5th year on the ballot. Rowland said, I think those guys will probably get in at like 9 or 10, maybe Helton more
I would think so.
than Rowland. This guy's been on his 8th year on the ballot, which is surprising to me. Billy Wagner, who outside of Mariano Rivera for a while, and maybe even Trevor Hoffman in his heyday, was the top reliever in the league. This is a guy who had 422 saves. He was a 7-time All-Star, Roll Age Relief Man of the Year, 1999. I mean, this guy was unbelievable for the Astros for a minute, and then the Phillies, and then the Mets is where he had a lot of his heyday. A guy that I think gets a lot of, he doesn't get a lot of attention compared to some other relievers of that era nowadays, but he was still among the top in his league. And he hasn't had a lot of support over his voting process. I believe it was his support increased from 46% in 2021, 51% in 2022. You'd have to make a massive jump over the next 5 years in order to get, or next couple of years in order to get the 75%, which is qualifying. It's so tricky for me. I'd like to see him get in, but I don't know if I can put him in yet.
No, you can't. And I'm glad you brought up the jump. He wouldn't. He's in his 8th year, obviously after tenure off the ballot. One of the better players of his generation, not an all-time great.
Okay. So this is a guy that I thought when I was like 8 or 9 years old, I thought this guy was for sure headed to the Hall of Fame. Then he got traded to the Dodgers, and then it was like, oh, well, never mind. Andrew Jones. This guy got started off at 9. This guy hit 2 home runs in the World Series at 19 years old. What were you doing at 19 years old? He hit 434 home runs, 1,200 RBIs, almost 1,300. Played for the Braves and all those good teams they played for. Had a bit of a comeback with the Yankees, but then it just wasn't there. 5-time All-Star, 10 Gold Glove awards. I mean, home run leader in 2005 was the dude in 2005. This one's tricky too. I think it's a case of like with Joe Mauer, where you thought this guy was far and away, no doubt about it, the first decade. And then the next 5-10 years, it's like, oh, wow, you kind of had a drop off there. But you can still appreciate the success he had in the beginning. This is his 6th year going into the ballot. I don't think it's going to be enough.
No, I don't think it'll be enough either.
Yeah, so we're on that. But I think this next one might get our attention a little bit better. Gary Sheffield. Gary Sheffield, obviously, with the crazy batting stance and all, was a dangerous home run hitter. And this is a guy mentioned before, was kind of caught up in the steroid talk, obviously with the Mitchell report. He was a name on there. He was implicated in the Balco scandal, but 9-time All-Star, won that World Series with the Marlins in 97, 5 Silver Sluggers, was a batting champion early on in his career with the Padres. You know what? 500 and some home runs I mentioned before. That's pretty much automatic. You would get in at the Hall of Fame. Almost 1,700 RBIs, 20, almost 2,700 hits. I would put Sheffield on my ballot.
100%. He should be a Hall of Famer. I think the first thing that you pointed out was he's in the 500 home run club. You talk about the hits, runs batted in. Mitch, he also hit a career 292, which is right on the cusp of the 300 average. So he should absolutely be in there. And the next guy is a no-brainer.
He's a no-brainer to you. So you would think Alex Rodriguez, I mean,
no-brainer.
On paper, no doubt. No doubt. This is what's tricky for me. It's very likely that Alex Rodriguez kind of got involved into the game that I'm calling it, the steroid game, long before what we know now about him came out. What happened in 2009, what happened that got him suspended for over a season. A few years later, the biogenesis scandal. I think even if he hadn't taken what he had taken, he still probably would have been on track to go to the Hall of Fame. And because of that, I'm willing to put him on that list. And I've kind of mellowed. I used to be one of those guys where I kind of gave Alex Rodriguez like the one raised eyebrow, because even though I can't do a raised eyebrow, just because Derek Jeter was my guy for years and he would always bomb out in the playoffs, except for 2009. When the scandal happened, I was just kind of like, this guy, I can't take this guy anymore, especially when he exited the Yankees in 2016. Over the years, I've kind of mellowed out on him. He's a decent broadcaster and businessman, and he's just kind of been like, whatever. So, but at the same time, I'll give him his props, because he's a guy that, based on pure talent alone, would be one of the all-time greats of his era. The next guy, 10th year on the ballot, was a very good player, was an MVP in 2000. Jeff Kent, 5-time All-Star, 4 Silver Sluggers, played with the Indians in 96. But obviously his heyday was with the Giants and for a little bit with the Astros. You have almost 2,400 hits, 1,500 RBIs, 377 home runs. Kind of was like the second guy on those Barry Bonds Giants teams, to the point where I think he and Barry Bonds got into it in the locker room. Do you put Jeff Kent in the Hall of Fame at all, or is this just a guy who comes up short?
This is a guy that's in the very, very, very good Hall of Fame. He's not in the MLB Hall of Fame.
I figured as much. Manny Ramirez, we have a bit of a bias because he did spend the first few years of his career here and had a lot of great moments. And then when he went to Boston, he just went up even further with that. Was involved with the steroids thing as well, or the PEDs at least, and played for what felt like 40 years out in between Major League Baseball and then over in overseas. I think it's pretty obvious, PEDs and all, that this guy would get in. And I assume you're going to say the same.
Yep.
All right. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
312 batting average.
Yeah. 2,500. Yeah. Sorry. 2,500 hits, 500 some home runs, 1,800 RBIs. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on the ballot. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 on the ballot. So there's one player difference between you and I, and that's Scott Rowland. So now it's going to get a little interesting, especially with the next couple of names I'm going to list here. Oh, crap. This honestly, this may make me take Scott Rowland off the ballot. I'm not sure. I'm going to keep him here for now, because the next one on the list, I think, Mitch, is a very interesting case, and it's Omar Vizquel. And we can discuss some of the things that have gone on in Omar's post-playing career, those are very different from the things that happen on field. When you look at what Omar was able to do in terms of how fielders were able to perform and how he was one of the top shortstops of his era, 11 Gold Gloves. Even when he wasn't with the Indians anymore, he was still winning them with the Giants and for 2 years, and he was a 3-time All-Star. He was never, it's funny how he was never like the top guy for Cleveland during those 90s runs, but over the years, I think it also plays in a part too that he kind of stuck around the longest up through 2004 to where we could start to appreciate him a little bit, and he became a fan favorite for many years, even when he was coaching for other teams and when he would come back. Now it's a little bit tricky, but we're focusing on the on-field stuff here. Baseball related stuff here. Does Omar Vizquel get a plaque in your mind, and not just beyond the Guardians Hall of Fame?
Yes, there's no doubt. Offensively, if you want to look at his numbers career compared to Derek Jeter beats him there. But Mitch, defensively,
yeah,
I'm gonna upset you because I know you're a Derek Jeter guy. Defensively, there's absolutely no reason he should be outside the Hall of Fame if Derek Jeter is in it, because Derek Jeter is not what Omar was, even in the same room defensively as a shortstop.
Yeah, no, I'm not one of those people that is a denier when it comes to Derek Jeter's field. Derek was a good, very good fielder at times, pretty good. He was never the best. He wasn't Ozzie Smith. He wasn't Omar. He wasn't all these other guys. So with that, I can put him in. Again, will he ever get in? Who knows? 5th year on the ballot. Andy Pettitte is such a fascinating take to me because you wouldn't think he's this superstar pitcher, but with the numbers that he was able to rack up over nearly 2 decades of play, it gets my attention a little bit. 256 wins, which you're never going to see a pitcher even probably reach 250 wins as far as our era is going right now. 3.85 ERA, nearly 2,500 strikeouts, played for a number of those great Yankee teams. It was part of that core 4 with Jeter, Mariano, and Jorge Posada. Was the ALCS MVP in 2001, was the wins leader in 96. People forget he was the ace for a little bit before guys like Roger Clemens and Mike Mussina got to the Yankees. 5 World Series titles for those teams, Mitch, is so impressive. And of course, he got mixed in that game as well. He admitted to using human growth hormone in 2002, admitted a few years later. I would put him in. I don't know if you would, though. I predict that you would not put him in the Hall of Fame.
No, I would put him in, because you look at his entire career, you look at the times he was with New York, and obviously I think playing in the New York market does play a factor when it comes to votes from Hall of Fame voters. I mean, Mitch, he has a storied career. Like you mentioned, 5-time World Series champ. He left New York for a quick stint in Houston for 3 seasons. Or I'm sorry, not 3 seasons, but
he
went to Houston. Yeah, 3 seasons. I'm sorry. Came back to New York and then picked up where he left off. This is somebody that was 19-11 in the postseason as a pitcher with a 3.81 ERA. To me, this is somebody, and you talk about outside factors that play into it. And I'm not talking about the human growth hormone. I'm talking about playing in New York, playing in a tough city with media and everything. A left-handed pitcher, Mitch, and I think that's what kind of sets him aside from others. He was one of the best left-handed pitchers we saw for a time. And you mentioned the name Andy Pettitte, and people automatically start to talk about his success in the postseason, talk about his success in New York, and the fact, like you mentioned, 256 wins as a pitcher, a 60.2 WAR. Andy Pettitte, to me, is probably one of those guys that just barely eclipses the 75% vote threshold, but he does get in.
Even through 2010, he was still making the All-Star team. He was 11-3 that year. That guy was a workhorse pitcher well into his late 30s, which is very, very impressive to me. And I think he just had that sort of it factor. Also, as a former left-handed pitcher myself, one of the best pickoff moves in league history. That man could fool any base runner, no matter how fast. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So my ballot is officially full, even with Scott Rowland still on the cusp there. That really sucks because if we didn't have all these names on the ballot, I would put Scott Rowland in on my ballot for this year. But I kind of changed the rules here, so it was very tricky. I guess we're all just gonna have these guys on our list because you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 on your ballot right now, I believe. Yeah, so that's I guess we're all done here. But I do want to look at some of the other names going against some of the names that we kind of added to this. We're looking at some of these guys here. Jimmy Rollins, would that be a guy that you would think could get on the ballot, could get in with a few ballots down the road?
I don't think so. I think he's just somebody like a couple other guys we mentioned. Very, very good.
Bobby Abreu.
Bobby Abreu is an interesting one that I think it would just depend on who else is on the ballot the year that, other years. I think he has a compelling case. But at the same time, I just don't think he's going to be good enough to ever get in.
What about Mark Burley? Mark Burley was definitely a workhorse pitcher. Like Pettit, was a left-hander, fifth all-time, well, for the White Sox, fifth all-time in strikeouts. Had a couple of no-hitters, had that big perfect game a few years ago. It was one of the best games I've ever watched. Probably the best White Sox pitcher of the 2000s. And I don't know. I think if he were on the 9th or 10th ballot at some point, he can maybe get a sneak in, but it would be very close. It'd be like 75.2%.
I think there's one more name on that list that I want to look at, and that's Torrey Hunter right there.
Yeah.
Third year before we go to first year, and I don't think we need to talk about a lot of the first year, but
first year
Torrey Hunter
one. Go ahead. Yep.
First year, or I'm sorry, Torrey Hunter. This is a compelling case too, because not only was he a very talented player at the plate for the teams he did play for, and obviously Minnesota is the one we talk about the most. Twins, the Angels, Tigers, and came back and ended things with the Twins. But you see right there, 9-time Gold Glover, 2-time Silver Slugger. He's in the Twins Hall of Fame, 5-time All-Star. This is a guy that I think has an opportunity to make it later on down the road. But we start picking hairs because then you can mention some of the other players above that I said don't get in. I think to me, Torrey Hunter is a name that I just remember watching more so than some of those others, and how much he would torment the Indians at the time, as well as other teams, and just some of those phenomenal plays he's made in classic games and the All-Star game as well.
Yeah, we do. The one that you mentioned is the one where he robbed Barry Bonds of the home run in Milwaukee, and then he got picked up by Bonds. It's funny, my first memory of Torrey Hunter was actually in the 2006 postseason when the Twins were playing the Athletics. I believe it was Eric Chavez who hit a routine fly to center field, and Torrey Hunter went to go catch it on his side and missed the ball completely. So the ball went all the way to the wall, and they got an inside the park home run on that. But it's kind of funny how those things work out, because Torrey Hunter is one of the best fielders of his era. Now that you mentioned those first year guys, and I know that you say there's going to be not much to talk about, and some of those names I agree, Bronson Arroyo, Jacoby Ellsbury. What about this guy though? Carlos Beltran is so fascinating to me, because this is a guy as well that in the 2000s was the dude. He was the rookie of the year with the Kansas City Royals, was the best thing they had for a while, goes to the Houston Astros for a bit, goes to the Mets, has one of the best postseasons I remember seeing in my first year of getting into baseball in 2006. Of course, that ended with Adam Wainwright hanging a curveball on him that he took for strike 3 in Game 7. And then keeps going through the 2010s with the Giants and the Cardinals and the Yankees and the Rangers, and then finally gets that World Series with the Astros in 2017. That's a 9-time All-Star, Mitch. He was Rookie of the Year, Gold Glove Award winner, Silver Slugger.
Roberto Clemente Award winner too. That's a big award in baseball. That's like Walter Payton for football.
I honestly could, if we're taking out all the names from the scandals and everything, that's a guy I could easily put on a list for 2023.
I agree, but Mitch, he won't get because of the issues in baseball surrounding him when he was in Houston. But in terms of just overall player, he is absolutely a Hall of Famer. I don't think he'll get in if they're going to hold Beltran to the standards of other players that are on our list currently that should be in the Hall of Fame. But it's once again why I go back to how I opened people on my list, why the Hall of Fame voting is wrong.
Well, it's interesting too, because it says here Beltran was revealed as the alleged mastermind behind the whole thing with the whole. And when you look at guys now like Jose Altuve or Alex Bregman or Justin Verlander, Verlander kind of came in late. When you look at those guys' career, that's going to be an interesting case down the road. And I still think they would be able to get in because not only were they great players for all these seasons, they kind of softened the blow by winning a second World Series title this year, seemingly without the use of trash cans or any communication systems. So I don't know. I'm still confident with this one in Beltran, because this guy was a very, 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 very good player for many, many years, from his times in Kansas City all the way through. He made the 2016 All-Star team within his year with the Rangers. So, and that was when he was almost 40 years old. So it proves that this guy could play no matter if he needed help or not. Yeah. Other than that, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think that's about it. I think the only one you can talk about after that might be R.A. Dickey, but I think I just lean that way just because he was a different type of player than others.
Well, he didn't have he didn't have a long enough prime, I think, because it was it was from 2012 to 2013 with the Mets and the Blue Jays, when, you know, his story was incredible, what he had to get through in order to become the pitcher that he became. But at the same time, I think it's just a case of not having as long enough of success. Matt Cain, great story, threw a perfect game, was a very good pitcher for the Giants and a lot of those World Series teams, not getting in. Bronson Arroyo, we all know him from obviously that picture right there. He's not getting in, even though I liked him. Jacoby Ellsbury, one of the worst contracts the Yankees ever put to ink. But the man could play. The man could play in his heyday. Andre Ethier was fine for the Dodgers. JJ Hardy. John Lackey had a bit of a run with the Angels. I think it was with he did win the World Series. Yeah, with the Angels, the Red Sox, and the Cubs. I knew he was part of that Cubs team. Oh, poor Johnny Peralta. Look at these guys. Look at these two guys. I know we're biased here, man. But look at these two. Johnny Peralta, who was a name in the 2000s, I remember for many years the Indians, and then of course became an all-star with the Tigers and the Cardinals, was also involved in the biogenesis scandal, but the numbers aren't there. And then Napoli obviously was great for us for the 1 year. That's an interesting one. K-Rod.
Yeah.
The leading, the all single season saves record in 2008, 62 of them. Even the best pitchers today are not breaking that.
No. And that's also before that was probably right at the tail end, Mitch, of where people really cared about a pitcher's availability and arm health and all the things that we talk about today when it comes to a pitcher. You know, even going back to ALDS Game 5 of, should the Guardians have started Bieber on short rest? This is when they literally would throw K-Rod out there all the time, and he was dominant. He single-handedly had the most dominant season as a closer in baseball history. 62 saves is absurd.
I could see myself putting him on the ballot maybe in a few years' time. I also like this stat too. His first year in the big leagues, it's kind of like with Miguel Cabrera the following year for the Marlins, tied Randy Johnson for the record for most victories in a postseason with 5 when the Angels won that World Series. So that was very, very impressive. Houston Street was a very solid reliever for a few years. My first memory of him was giving up that ALCS walk-off to Maglio Ordonez in 2006, but had a good run. Jared Weaver had a bit of a run there. Also, his brother played for the Dodgers, I believe. And then finally, Jason Worth kind of fell off a little bit after that Nationals contract, but had a few more years after that. Was very great in that World Series run for the Phillies and was an all-star. But just goes to show it's a very weird ballot this year. And it kind of stinks when our list is mostly made up of players who the voters have kind of cast aside as, you're not getting in or we're not letting you in.
What's wrong with baseball, Mitch? That there's still a lot wrong. And it starts with the guy that's running baseball right now, which is another conversation for another day. But I just have a huge issue with this because I don't know how you can have a Hall of Fame without the best players of all time, because people's feelings are involved too much.
Yeah, and we're up to see. I'm also going to take a look at that contemporary era ballot for the next years to come, because McGriff got in, but Don Mattingly, man, if he'd have just played like one more year, and gotten that World Series, he would have gotten into the Hall of Fame, because that man for a decade was the dude in the Bronx. And then of course, Schilling, Dale Murphy, Albert Bell, but Albert Bell's not getting in as much as as good as he was. Rafi Palmeiro, this segment went really long. I kind of apologize, but at the same time, it was fun to talk baseball with you, Mitch, in the off season. So yeah, that's all we have here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Of course, you can find us here on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SoundCloud. You can also go to our website, BigTimeSportsOhio.com. You can find us there, videos, articles, and everything. Also, our schedule for the upcoming games. And yeah, you can find us on Twitter at BTS Ohio, Big Time Sports Ohio on Facebook and Instagram, at Mitch Spinell everywhere, at Mitchell Ballot everywhere. Mitch, what is our fact of the day?
Your fact of the day is a shark is the only known fish that can blink with both eyes.
It's the only known fish. Like, okay, yeah, wow, okay. I guess never really processed fish as being able to blink before. Yeah, I could see that. Because when you think of fish, you think of like their eyes as being like this, but it's mainly because we see them at a grocery store. Like I was at what's that grocery store? The West End Market a couple of weeks ago, or West Side Market a few weeks ago, and there was like these giant fish that were just laying out, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go into this section of the store now. I'm not gonna stay here for very long. Also, the smell was bad too. So, well, thank you for joining me, Mitch. Good luck on your upcoming surgery. I hope to have you back very soon, healthy and ready to go. And you take as much time as you need. And as for you guys, thank you so much for listening or watching to the Big Time Sports Podcast Show.